everybody, welcome back to Northernlion Plays the Binding of Isaac. We lost this run. It's resinous to try to... No, we didn't lose this run. This was actually... I mashed spacebar at the time that we completed our previous run. Hold on. Ruka spun around, his tail knocked over my water bottle into the duck game duck that then quacked. Quack, quack, quack. Ducks fly together. Oh my lord. Soy milk. RN8V 8L SM. And a little gulp. I didn't see if we had a trinket. That one's on me. Now we do. So Dad's Key, huh? It's an interesting start. I can't really... I honestly don't have a good way to think about this run. In terms of its DPS, except to say that I guess I feel like we're right around average damage, because, you know, normally we'd expect average to be like 10 rate of fire, 3.5 damage. Instead, we've got 1 rate of fire, 0.55 damage, so it kind of scales to like, you know, 10, 5.5, which is obviously really good. However, it's not that good, because we also have huge knockback associated with soy milk. So I'd say right around average feels like a good compensatory factor for that. And then you got to remember the other thing, which is that we didn't have a choice in the matter to begin with, so how we feel about it doesn't really matter all that much in the whole scheme of things. What matters a great deal is how we perform. But I'm excited to get back, you know. I didn't feel too bad about our last loss. We have been losing like crazy. But they've been hard runs. Like I still don't believe we've had many of our recent losses have been the result of like incredibly poor play. I think mostly we've had some super cursed sort of conditions. I hate to offload. I mean, I can't offload all the blame. Most of the time, a win is on the table, no matter what. But you know, you just got to make it happen for yourself. He went betwixt the rocks. Don't lie to me, I saw it happen. And you know, you might notice I'm feeling a little bit more mellow right now. I got a little bit of a lighter, I don't know if a lighter is the right word, a little airier, more relaxed tone of voice. Reason for that is later at night here. It's, usually I record Isaac earlier in the day, but honestly, you know, at this point in my life, Isaac is a little bit more mindless most of the time. And I thought, you know what? I've been losing a lot of the other games I've been playing. What if I mix it up? When I'm fresh, earlier in the day, record, you know, some of the stuff that's maybe a little bit more thought intensive. And late in the day, I can just, you know, zone out, play a little Isaac. Because I really do believe, I mean, I'm not a cognitive scientist, a psychologist, etc., a neurologist. But I believe that there's night owls and morning people. I always thought that I was a night owl. Then I realized, as I've gotten older, I don't think I was ever a night owl. I think I just went to bed late. There's two different things. For me, a night owl is not someone who stays up late. I mean, literally, that's probably the definition of the term. But for the purposes of this discussion here, it's not really, for me, a person who stays up late. It's a person who's, like, most energized late at night or, you know, late in the day. They do their best work, you know, later than most people. Definitely will snag this. And that's not me. Though it sounds funny, because, you know, when do I wake up on the average day? I probably wake up, well, it's actually been getting earlier. I've been having, like, the dream snoozes lately, in a good way, where I wake up, like, literally, like, 5 minutes before my alarm goes off, and I'm like, well, it feels great. I usually wake up around like 9:30 a.m. I still, though, maintain I'm a morning person. You know, when I wake up, have a cup of coffee, I'm energized. I'm good to go. And I do my best work. Not necessarily immediately after I wake up, but like, you know, I work out in the morning and, you know, that's comfortable for me. You know, I take a couple of hours usually before bed to just kind of chill out. Kate's like the opposite. She's got a slow start in the morning, but then at night, like an hour before bed, she's like, you know, let's do our taxes. And I wouldn't say it creates conflict, but it does create friction sometimes. Because, you know, when I'm done with work, I'm like, these are the final things that I was going to focus on today, and I'm done. And then she's like, hey, do a basic task. And I'm like, I'm afraid I can't do that. I'm afraid that cannot be done. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying I'm a bad husband in this regard. After I finish work, my routine is like, you know, I usually knock out like a chore or two. You know, last night, cleaned the litter box, took all the garbage and recycling out, you know, put the dishes in the dishwasher. Maybe tonight, I don't know, we'll give the wet floor a little bit of a Swiffer. Or actually, you know what? We could probably use a load of laundry or something along those lines. I like to knock out like one chore at night, and then the house is always like reasonably clean. So it's not like, you know, after I finish work, my wife is like, hey, you know, we're living in a pigsty, do something about it. And I'm like, man, I'm tired. But like, you know, if I go to bed at like 12:30, it's a tricky one. I think we should buy this. I think we should stay safe. If I go to bed at like 12:30, from 11 to 12:30, do not hit me with any kind of... If you're like, hey, what do you think about, you know, the conflict between Israel and Palestine? I'm not going to give you a response that is fitting with the scale and scope of what you're asking me, is basically what I'm saying there. It's not a time for me to discuss important things. Now, in general, you probably shouldn't ask me that question in the first place, because I don't know what I'm talking about with respect to that. All I can really do is abstain and say that I don't really know it, but then people will be like, why don't you know it? You should know it. It's important. And I'd be like, I know it's important, but you get the idea. I'm just having a laugh right now. So we do want to use Dice Shard right there. It's not something to have a laugh about. Yeah, I know, but like, I chose a bad metaphor, okay? So I do believe that there's night and morning people, and weirdly enough, I'm like a morning person. I mean, I want to say like I'm an afternoon person, but I think most people are late morning, early afternoon people. Like, I think if you took like a poll that allowed people to choose, like, hey, if you could choose a time X hours after you woke up for your job to start, what time would you choose? I feel like most people would probably choose like 2 to 3 hours after they wake up. Feel free to tell me if you disagree. I think there will be disagreeers, but I have anecdotal evidence to back it up. I wake up at 9:30-ish. Usually start working at around 11:30. Depends on, you know, whether or not I'm in the gym that morning, but between 11 and noon, for sure. What do I do in that interim period? Well, go to the gym, shower, eat breakfast, etc., etc. The time goes by pretty quick, you know? Now, you might say that's just one bit of evidence. And while you are correct, I think we're happier with Dad's Key, just for laughs. While you are correct, when I worked in Korea, I didn't start work until 3 p.m. Well, I didn't have class until 3 p.m. That required me to be to the school at 2 p.m. So you might be like, what do you do with your mornings? Well, I didn't do anything with my mornings because I woke up at like noon most of the time. Now, it makes it seem like you're living that nightlife, and I mean, I guess some of the times I was, but on the other hand, it was really like, when you work at 3, you finish work at like 10 or 11. You know, you want to have like a couple of hours of relaxation before bed. It might be 1 in the morning. You know, you don't have to get up at noon. That's a little bit of a stretch there, but you know, you get what I mean. Probably. I don't know, man. Maybe do we want 2 coupons? 2 coupons? No, we don't need 2 coupons. Don't be an idiot. What's happening here? I'm very confused. Okay. Many batteries. Pills. Thank you for not teleporting me out of here. I would have been very sad. We've got unlimited money. I have no idea if we benefit from 2 hive minds. I'm pretty confident we do not benefit from 2 9 volts, but what a world, dude. Anyway, So in a way, like, my sleep schedule sort of naturally led to me waking up 2 or 3 hours before work, and then, you know, you get a chance to ease into your day. Now, of course, that's not always possible. You know, when I was in school started at like 8:15 in the morning. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I had to wake up at 6:45 just to get to school on time, because I had to, you know, shower, eat breakfast, then you take the school bus, and then you know, the school bus takes like half an hour to an hour and a half, depending on where the heck you live. You get the idea. I think most people, I don't know. There are weirdos out there, super morning people, who are like, I would choose for my job to start the minute I woke up so it could be done sooner and I would have more free time. Okay, let me know how that works in practice for you. Get a job where you make your own hours, work from home. And I want to see you awake, 6 a.m., signed into the company Slack at 6:15. No exceptions. But, you know, maybe you're being honest about it. I'm not trying to assume you're going to be dishonest about it. Sort of. We definitely don't need more money, so forget the blood bank for now. It's pretty bad. But honestly, I think we need it for the damage, as busted as that is. And I'll check our curse room here. It's been a long video, considering we're only 2 floors deep right now. Yo. Okay. Well worth it so far, and the more guppy chances, the merrier, of course. Anyway, I think for most people, if you were like, hey, you work 9 to 5 right now, if you could change your hours, but you had to keep the same duration, when would you work? I think most people, at least most people my age, if they didn't have kids, they would probably be like, you know what? 10 to 6. Just move it a little bit. I'm here to tell you, though, I get your frustration. It must be frustrating listening to YouTubers with bad sleep schedules talk about how bad their sleep schedules are all the time. I hear you, dude. It's frustrating for me in a way, too, because I fought that demon and made it. I made it happen. Because I'm not saying I got the cure, but I'm telling you, dude, people have too much disrespect for routine. I am a slave to the routine, and I love it. And it's worked out well for me. The other thing, you know, the main culprit for insomnia, for me, is having to wake up. If I know that there's something I have to wake up for, it makes it much harder to fall asleep. And that's, you know, it's kind of hard to do something about that. But in a way, I gotta tell you, there's benefits to the 9 to 5 work, 9 to 5 school sort of lifestyle that you don't get if you're a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer. And honestly, one of them is having a hard and fast wake up time. You know, if you, you know, you work at a lumber mill, you're supposed to clock in at 8 a.m. You have to clock in at 8 a.m. If you don't clock in at 8 a.m., well, I mean, your boss is going to yell at you. You know, you might get fired or disciplined. You make less money. Wife and kids have to go without. It creates deep-seated feelings of shame, etc., etc. So what do? Hey, it's 4 a.m. You got to be at the office in 4 hours. You get as much sleep as you can. You go to the office. You have one tired day. Go to bed a little earlier that night, and usually you get it back. If your sleep schedule is reasonably healthy and you don't have something larger going on, which people do, either chronically or from time to time, but still, you know, you sort it out in a couple of nights. What happens if you're a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer? I stayed up a little bit too late, new video. Oh, I was having such a good time playing Borderlands 3, I just screwed up my sleep schedule. Supposed to get up at 9 a.m., alarm goes off, you're like, I don't really want to get up at 9 a.m., it's only been 4 hours of sleep, I could just get another couple hours of sleep. Then, all of a sudden, you look at your clock again, it's 2:30 p.m., you've accidentally overslept by like 4 hours. As much as people can be rude in Twitch chat, trust me, I'm not gonna be the guy who's like, the real problem is people are too nice. No, but people are also they're almost too understanding some of the time. You know, and that, I'm not saying that leads to unhappiness, but I'm saying that it creates a situation where there's maybe less consequences for falling out of that habit. Which has, you know, good things, because it means, you know, you don't have to have one incredibly poor night of sleep, but it also has bad things. Like maybe you stay in a erratic sleep schedule long term. So in a way, having, I mean, that's kind of like the spirit of becoming an adult, right? Like, I know I talk about this all the time. Please forgive me. It's a soy milk run. I've really grown up a lot, like in the past few years. And, you know, some of it has been, like self-directed, and some of it has been because there's been more responsibilities, you know, in my life. You know, as you get older, you start to think about, you know, do we want to get a house? Do we want to have kids? Etc., etc., etc. It kind of forces you to... I mean, I use this metaphor. It came off the top of the dome piece. It was like 3 years ago. It's the best metaphor I've ever come up with. It was when Cobalt told me he was having a kid, and I was like, you know, having a kid is like, for your life, it's like hitting your hand against the side of a Pringles can. You know, it really like forces all the potato chips to either get in order, or some of them are gonna snap off. You know? So, I'm not saying we're having a kid in the near future, but, you know, it's on the multi-years away horizon, potentially. Hold on, use Dad's key here. Although the stat down is pretty bad. Wow, that was exclusively a tears down. Oh, but I think we're still fine. I mean, what did you expect it to be? Of course it's a tears down. It's triple shot. Having more coverage actually strikes me as being extremely good with soy milk because the knockback isn't as catastrophic. You can knock an enemy into a shot, you're still, you know, shooting. Anyway, you know, so that forces you to grow up a little bit as well, you know? I mean, when you hit 30, society most of the time starts treating you like an adult. The only people who call you young man are like, you know, 135 years old. You start to see, you know, like professional athletes retiring when they're 3 years older than you. And it's you know, it's time to get a little bit more responsible. So I feel like, you know, the spirit of me becoming the Omega adult is like, you gotta learn to be your own parents, right? You know, you gotta... Huge growth, huh? You gotta... You know, the things that your parents told you to do that you didn't want to do when you were a kid, you gotta start doing them for you. You don't want to be the guy... I mean, maybe you do. I shouldn't tell you how to live your life. I'm just one man. But I always think, like, you know, sometimes oh, I don't know why I got a Windows notification there, but that's okay. Please stop. I sometimes see, you know, these posts online that are like, you know, my life's so great. I'm 40. I'm unmarried. There's no lady around to sap my salary. Every night, I smoke 15 cigars, get drunk, and watch Netflix until 3 a.m. It's living the dream. And I'm like, brother, that's not living the dream. I'm not saying you have to go on a more traditional path, but that's I'm not going to say living a nightmare necessarily, because that's a bit of a value judgment. That's not for me to say, but, you know, what I feel that you've done is... You've concocted like a 22-year-old man's ideal environment. But you know, what works for the 22-year-old man does not necessarily work for the 55-year-old man. That's why when you see, you know, different people have different tolerances for the thing I'm about to say. But when I see like a young adult behaving badly in public, I'm like, they're kind of a jerk, but, you know, they could easily grow out of it. They got time. And you know, when you're young, you make mistakes. When I see, like, an older dude behaving badly in public, I'm like, you're lost. You're fully compromised forever. Maybe not. I mean, you could... Maybe there could be a late career renaissance, a la former Philadelphia Flyers winger Mike Knuble, but I don't know. I think you'd... Let me put it this way. If I had constructed my ideal life at like different phases of my own growing up, it would be like wildly different. Like me right now, I would be very unhappy living like 19-year-old me's dream life, for sure. But then if I had started living that dream life, maybe I would grow accustomed to it and it would continue to become my dream life. You get the idea, right? But, you know, if I was like 16 and I made my dream life, I don't know, it would be like, I want to make like a lot of money. Like $20,000 a year. That's enough to cover just about anything a man could want. And then have a lot of time to sit around, play Halo 2. That's all I need. Then if I was like, you know, if I was 19, I'd be like, yo, the dream is that like you and your boys just live in a house together. Like, who says college has to end after college, dude? Why don't we all just get a place together? We'll go 9sies on a 2-bedroom condo, and we'll just keep living the same lifestyle we're living right now until we're dead. I would be just disgusted with that right now. If you're watching this and you're like, that sounds cool, I hear you. Don't get me wrong. And I'm wistful for those days sometimes. But at the same time, you will probably grow out. There's a reason most people grow out of it, you know? People always look at it like, you know, oh, when you grow up, you lose that fire. And I'm like, you don't really lose the fire. I just have more respect for myself now. That's the way I see it. I'm trying to fight back against this perceived ageism. Actually, so I was on like a bodybuilding subreddit. And you know, there's all these posts about like steroids, basically. And if you're not familiar, and this is again, is hearsay, but this seems to be the commonly agreed upon standard for bodybuilding. Any professional bodybuilder, like all the Mr. Olympias, etc., pretty much have to be on steroids in order to compete at that level. None of the people, probably like none of the top 100 bodybuilders in the world, by placement, are not using performance-enhancing drugs, no matter what they say. Now, they can't come out and say that they use it because it's a crime. But it's kind of like the world's worst-kept secret, right? But anyway, there's a surprising amount. Like, if you had asked me, like, what percentage of fitness enthusiasts are on steroids, I probably would have been like, I don't know, like 1%, maybe less. But, you know, I mean, being on Reddit gives you a serious distortion, I suppose. But, you know, I've come to realize from the anecdotes that I see out there, it might be a little bit higher. Now, of course, people that care enough, especially about, I don't consider myself a bodybuilder, obviously, but, you know, it's just I go to it for curiosity's sake some of the time. And plus to see how I stack up against Brandon Curry, 2019's Mr. Olympia. I mean, he's got me in a couple poses, but I think, honestly, if I got to determine the lighting, I might be able to make it happen. Like, if I made it completely dark so none of the judges could see either of our physiques, I give myself about a 50% chance to win. Anyway. See, the joke is they would be choosing randomly. I saw one guy post, and it's always like this... You always cringe when you see young guys pretending to be old. and I recognize that I'm doing that right now. But the guy was like, yeah, I took steroids. And you know what? People always tell you when you're older, you're gonna regret it. But I don't regret it at all. I had some of the best times of my life, and I might honestly keep using them as I get older. I don't believe that when you get older, your life gets worse because, you know, your physicality or whatever declines. I believe you just stop giving 110% and, you know, caring so much about your passions that you let yourself become boring. And I was like, dude, this is a really, like, erudite and impassioned argument to be writing, and then get on your high horse about injecting yourself with synthetic testosterone so that you can grow muscles at a really fast pace. I'm like, I get what you're saying, but I'm like, man, I hope there's no like 16-year-olds here that are like, well, this grizzled old graybeard, 24-year-old, do you even lift, bro? PM me your biceps, says that, you know, I mean, he's basically ancient. He's in his final year of college. And he says he doesn't regret it, so it's just, you know. People, so many negative things associated with aging. I think aging rules, dude. You know it's going to be a long episode when we're talking about this. This is like my go-to philosophical discussion. Is like, what does it mean to get older? The only reason I talk about it so much is because I'm constantly having to be defensive about it. Because people are always, you know, like, hey, what'd you have for dinner last night? And I'm like, I don't know, a nice balanced meal with my wife. And they're like, whatever, boomer. I had 3-month-old ice cream from the back of the freezer. I feel like garbage. Isn't it awesome to be young? I mean, nah, dude. Being old and responsible is pretty cool. I really see it, like, I've come to take a surprising amount of pleasure in, like, organizing stuff. And it's weird for me because I've always been very disorganized. But I'm like, even at the point now where like I visualize my day almost like on a day planner in my mind, and then my whole day is just filling buckets, you know? I wake up, I take a little bit of my energy, I plop it down in the workout bucket. I come back up, I take a little bit of my energy, I pop it into the getting my job done bucket. You know, I finish my work, I take a little bit of my energy, I pop it into the maintaining a clean and, you know, nice household bucket. And then I take a little bit out and I put my energy into playing Slay the Spire on the Switch bucket. It's nice, dude. I would recommend, don't let the other people get you down, you know? People think that I've lived a very boring life as a result of that. It's not really the case, you know? Like, I'm going till I hear the bone heart snap. I wouldn't go so far as to say I've lived like the world's most exciting life. But sometimes people are like, your life sounds boring. And I'm like, yeah, well, why don't you tell me about yours? And they're like, well, I've lived in the same house since I was like 4. And I'm like, okay. When I graduated from school, I didn't know what to do. So like I moved to Asia. Like, I didn't speak the language. I've only been, you know, to Canada and the United States before in my entire life. Like, I'm not afraid of a little bit of... that's gonna blow him up. I'm not afraid of a little bit of uncertainty, you know? I like to throw myself into... there's the bone heart. I like to throw myself into uncertain situations from time to time, and I think it can be very important for growth, you know? But at the same time, I'm like, you know, at my age, I like what I like. I won't apologize for it. You know what I like? A soy milk run with a lot of weird item synergies gives us a chance for greatness here. You know, maybe you're finishing college, maybe it's your final year of college right now, and you're like, I don't know what to do. You know, you're gonna have friends around you, they're gonna be talking all sorts of big games. Hey, I'm founding a startup to revolutionize the iOS keyboard. That's cool, dude. Nothing right, dude, you might want to hop onto that, just to be honest. Even if it never comes out, if it gets some VC funding, you could be set for life, you know? You'll have other people that are like, I'm just gonna backpack around Asia for like, the rest of my life. That's cool too. But if you're like, finally I've got time to get a 9-to-5 job and read books at night, I support you 100% of the way. And people, you know, we got too many influential people in society who look down on stuff like that as like, you know, oh, you're compromising. You gotta live the life that makes you happy. Now, the caveat there, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, it's time for a change, you know? I think gamers in particular have a bias. They have a chip on their shoulder about the medium known as television. You know, because gamers have been under attack from time to time. You know, probably we've all had parents or people in our lives at some point be like, oh, why you spend so much time playing those video games? And then you just gotta hit them with the, oh, but it's okay that you spend, you know, 3 hours a day watching TV or something like that. Got him. But, you know, here's the thing. If you're happy, genuinely happy and fulfilled, and watching TV's your hobby, more power to you. Now, if you're, like, emotionally numb and dead inside, and you're just watching it to pass the time and stave off some bad feelings, what I would encourage there, you know, I've been there at points in my life. What I would encourage you to do is, you know, try to chart a course back to a little bit more fulfillment, but that's not really my area of expertise, to be honest with you. But you might want to, you know, try some new things in that case. Talk to some people. But if you're happy with it, don't let people get you down, you know? Don't go skydiving if you don't actually think that you'd enjoy skydiving. My friends tried to get me to go skydiving in college. I know I won't enjoy it, because I already don't enjoy roller coasters. And at the time, I was also afraid of flying. So, you know, at least on a roller coaster, like when you're in line, you can stave off the anxiety, because you're just like, I'm just in line. The real stuff doesn't happen until it starts ticka, 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 ticka. This would be like, hey, we're going to drive you out to the skydiving place, and then you're going to, like, get in a rickety old airplane, and then you're going to jump out of it. So it's like two very anxiety-inducing situations in a row. And I was like, you know, I don't really want to do it. Plus, you're telling me they're not going to pay me? I have to pay them? But they're like, oh, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know how many times I've fallen to my death in dreams? It happens like 4 times a year. It's like one of the most common recurring dreams. I think I know what it feels like. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, that's probably not a one-to-one relationship. But the other thing is, I don't care if you want to skydive. If you want to skydive, I encourage you to go skydiving. Stop trying to rope the non-skydivers into it. We're just minding our own business, okay? I can't remember. It's probably like the 9th time I've said this exact thing. Like, leave us alone. You go jump out of the airplane. You don't need me to be there. Oh, but you gotta be there so that I have someone to jump with. Maybe you don't actually want to jump that much, though, in that case, you know? Why do I have to... It's always... Couldn't you find someone more like-minded to do this with you? Look, all I'm saying is when District 9 came out in the summer of 2009, I went through my whole house the Saturday after it came out. I said, hey, I'm gonna go see District 9. You guys want to come? I got 5 no's. You know what I did? I went to the movie theater. I saw District 9 by myself. It was a great experience. I had a great time. Well worth the money. And honestly, it was kind of nice not to be forced to talk about the movie after the movie was over. That's always the most awkward part of the movie, right? Why can't they apply that logic to skydiving? Oh, we're guppy. We really needed a flavor booster on this one, so that's very nice. It's my only... The only part of the movie I don't like that much is having to talk about it at the end. And it varies, you know? Like when we saw Midsommar, I was like 100% sure that Kate hated it. Because I love it. It's a great movie, but it was bizarre. And more bizarre than I expected, for sure. So I was like, she hated this movie. When we got out, she was like, yo, that was so good. And I was like, you know what? This is a good one to talk about. Tease apart some of the metaphors and themes. But you know, it's the worst when you see a movie that's just okay. Because there's nothing to talk about, you know? I remember Kate and I, we saw Life starring Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal in theaters. We didn't expect it to be, oh, this is going to be a modern classic, you know? We're just doing it to pass the time. And maybe she thinks that Ryan Reynolds is cute. Apparently that's a thing that ladies think now and then, or whatever. It's probably because of his name. Anyway, after we saw it, she was like, what do you think? And I was like, it's alright. What do you think? She's like, yeah. You want to go get dinner? It's not like there's just, it's a weightless movie. It's gone as soon as it's over, it floats away in the breeze. It's like cotton candy in a half-full fish tank. You know what I mean, Ruka? Just disappears. Anyway. We have like a perfect soy milk run, minus Libra. Libra would make it really pop. But I gotta tell you, it's still not really that good. It's definitely unlosable. But, you know, considering the lights out kind of synergies we picked up, I am surprised that it's still a little underpowered. I'm not complaining. I'm just putting into context that even a great soy milk run, you know, is not necessarily bulletproof. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, That's my thoughts on adulthood. I think about it all the time. That's the other reason it comes up, you know? I have an audience that on average is probably just slightly younger than me. It's hard to avoid the temptation, whether you feel like, you know, you're an authority or not, to pass down a little bit of advice. You probably do the same thing, you know? I never had an older or a younger sibling growing up, so it's kind of a strange relationship for me, but you know, I think previously, and this, we're gonna get into some semi-real talk, and not real as in like, oh, you know, in 1998 I threw mankind off of a steel cage and broke his spine, you know? It's I'm talking about real as in like vulnerable. You know, this is the real thoughts. These are my real shower thoughts. Not like, hey, why don't they put the cap on the other side of the toothpaste tube? That way, you don't have to squeeze it all the way to the top. Once you get halfway through, you can just flip it over. That's off the top of the dome piece. That one's for free. That was a terrible dodge. But I was thinking today, I was like, you know, I've never been like super irresponsible in my life, but I've definitely become much more responsible. I was trying to tease apart, you know, the reasons for that. One of them is that, you know, my previous opinion on being like a quote-unquote influencer was like, you know, I just play video games and like, you know, I'm an entertainer. And I do still believe that. But I think previously I was like, you know, if you look to me as an influence, that's your fault, you know? You should look to more influential people, people who have got it more together, smarter people, more successful people, you know, yada, yada, yada. I realize it's a very immature attitude to have, even if it's not valid, you know? Or even if it is valid, is what I mean to say. You know, yeah, just because, you know, someone's a famous singer or something like that. But even that's kind of different, because, you know, like I talk about myself for a living, basically. So, but if someone's a singer, you know, you wouldn't necessarily like be like, oh, I expect you to be a good influence on the kids. You know, they got famous for singing. But, you know, I realize it's still kind of an immature mindset, in my opinion. The mature mindset is like, you know, if you're listening to my content, you know, maybe now and then, or maybe hours every day, you know, you can't help but be influenced by that in some way, you know? The content that you consume ends up, you know, giving you stuff to talk about in your own life, giving you stuff to think about in your own life. Might even change, you know, the verbiage you use, because, you know, you hear me say it all the time. So I can't really, it's not responsible to just be like, hey, don't be influenced by me. Like, if you're watching the content, you're influenced by me. And I think that's why I feel pressure, not in a bad way, but in a good way, to be, you know, to lead a more healthy and positive life, to be honest, you know, because I want to, you know, put that out in the world so the world gives it back to me as well, you know? When I have never gotten as many tweets about people who are like, I've started to get in shape. And, you know, you were the catalyst. Obviously, I don't deserve the credit. It's the same thing when I was doing programming more regularly. You know, oh my God, we got Libra. You know, people would tweet me and they'd be like, hey, because of you, I went back to school for programming and I'm graduating with, like, you know, my Bachelor's of Science in Software Engineering in, like, you know, 2 months. So thank you. I always say, like, you know, I didn't do anything. I'll take credit as the catalyst, but, like, you know, you're the one who actually put in the work and did the assignments and, you know, had the drive to do it in the first place. But, you know, it's whatever I talk about, I do see a rise in people being like, you know, I'm doing it myself. So, you know, I would much rather, and it benefits me too, don't get me wrong, but I would much rather lead like a healthy, positive lifestyle where, you know, the way I see it is I encourage people to help, you know, get out of their comfort zone a little bit and be their best selves. But that's probably a little bit up my own butt. Like, sometimes, you know, we give kind of tough love advice sometimes. It's never from, like, a mean-spirited place, you know? And it makes my life better as well, because I, you know, can pick up heavier weights, I guess. Anyway, this is a long, very soapbox-heavy episode, but for now, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, click the like button. It helps a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. See ya.